Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Robinson, Superintendent Shenendehowa Central School District. We're pleased to be here to discuss our completely virtual learning option. In doing so, we'll also address some of the in-person things related to schools, recognizing that parents are trying to get more clarification to make decisions. I would like to point out that we'll go today from 3:35 until 5 and try to be as efficient as we can in addressing the respective questions. Please type your questions in the YouTube chat. We have individuals in the room who will be collecting those questions, and at the end of this brief presentation, we'll be addressing those questions accordingly. Joining me is Dr. Elizabeth Wood, who's our Deputy Superintendent. She's here with the blue mask on. We're not only being social distance appropriate, we're also wearing our mask, and I've taken mine off while I'm speaking as well. A couple of things that I think people need to be aware of, and that's very important to know, that schooling in this COVID period is not the same. We have a lot of people making the assumption that when they say school going to reopen, it's going to reopen the same way prior to March 13th. That's not the case at all. It's not the case for in-person, and it's not the case for the completely virtual learning option that we're embarking upon as we speak in terms of planning and working out the details. Later on, again, from Dr. Wood, you'll hear some more details about our completely virtual option. But I think it's absolutely important that everyone realize that everything around school reopening is an evolving process. Every day we're getting different and new information that impacts our learning process. The information that we're gathering in terms of who will be opting for CVL is impacting our planning processes. Information we're gathering in terms of transportation is impacting our planning processes. Information we get in terms of staff availability is impacting our planning processes. I say that because people are looking for absolute concrete answers. And while we are certainly working towards having a very, very comprehensive plan and operationalizing it for the opening of school in September, you have to recognize that things are constantly evolving and we all have to be flexible. So I understand the frustration that some parents may feel. And we also have to recognize that we're feeling some of those same frustrations. However, every day we're committed to working through those things and truly transforming all those challenges into opportunities for our students. A couple other things I want to point out before, again, I turn this presentation over to Dr. Wood, is that we try to have a lot of resources available to the public. And it's important that people take the time to actually read some of the information that we have out there. For example, the Completely Learning virtual form, that document that was out there now for 2 weeks. We are extending the deadline. It's supposed to be tomorrow. That deadline we extended until Monday. Recognize again that people will get some information from this presentation, and we hope people will access our website and review the reopening document again. We hope people will look at the Q&A document, which we'll be updating based upon some of the responses and some of the questions from today, because that document becomes a source document. That when people have a question, I strongly encourage anyone to go to that document. It's organized by categories and it's designed to be user-friendly in the sense that we want people to understand as much as we can in terms of details what we're doing and what the intended outcomes are as we move forward. So please refer to those resource documents as we move forward. The second piece I also want to emphasize is that communications has been absolutely critical to this process. From the very beginning, we have been gathering feedback through surveys, feedback through conversations. A very extensive survey was completed. We had over 1,800 respondents to that survey. And from that led to a lot of the details that went into our plan. We developed a web page that's organized with everything reopening on that web page. There's an alert on the top of the school district web page. Click on that and it brings you to a page with everything related to reopening on that page. We have completed already 6 different live stream sessions. I point this out because people are referring to the governor's recent announcement saying schools need to do between 3 or 5 presentations to the public. I'm not sure if it was because the governor wasn't aware what schools were doing, but it's irrelevant, to be quite frank with you, because we can't communicate enough. However, it's important for people to know that we have had several live stream sessions already that have walked through the details of our reopening plan. All those sessions are recorded and listed, and you can link those sessions again off our website. So it's important for people to know that there's a lot of information already prepared and available for people to review. We also have had a special board meeting back on July 28th, which was the day before our plan was submitted. I want to emphasize that because you may have heard or read in the newspaper that the plan for Shenendehowa was not submitted. Our plan was submitted on July 29th. And I'm not being too personal, but that was my birthday, and it was my birthday present to myself when I hit the submit button to say that's one less thing I have to think about when I go home this afternoon and celebrate my birthday. So our plan was submitted on the 29th because of, quite frankly, some overlapping between the Department of Health and the SCD systems. Quite frankly, you're not sure what happened, but it's irrelevant. We resubmitted again, so our plans are in to both the State Education Department as well as the New York State Department of Health. So I want to put that question to bed as well. Transportation is a big piece of it, so we've also been asking about parents who will be opting out of transportation, who will be driving their students to school. It's important because we are trying to stagger transportation as much as possible to adhere to respective social distancing, and more importantly, to be able to transport kids and have schools start at a reasonable time. So transportation opt-out is a big piece of what we're trying to address. And so today we're talking about CVL. That's one of the sessions that we're focused on. We'll be going through our plan again on, in this case, by categories, if you will, looking at safety, PPE, and contact tracing on August 17th. We'll be looking at operations, food services, and transportation on August 18th, and instructional program logistics on August 19th. And by the way, the information that we're talking about, all that information is currently in our plan. So for people who are waiting to say, I want to wait till all 4 sessions are complete, please read the plan, read the Q&A document, and that's the information that we'll be reiterating again in those respective sessions as we move forward. We do recognize that there's certain nuances, what I call nuances, those specific things that can only occur once we're actually in session, once things are happening. So people want to know, the things such as supplies, those things will be coming from buildings. You'll get more information from your specific buildings once we recognize what teachers will be teaching, who and when. Those things will be coming. And we know that in a typical school year, you probably would have already had this information. However, this is not the typical school year. Things that we're doing now in August, quite frankly, are things that we would typically have already done in May and June. And the reason why is because everything, not only here at Shen, but across the state, across the nation, everyone, the time frame has been compressed because we're all trying to figure out how do we best provide a safe environment for students, a safe environment for our employees, and an effective instructional program, both in person and out of school. So those things are absolutely important. It's also important to know that right now, even into next week, there will be a lot more discussion with teachers and staff, with building principals and administrators, all those people working together again to work out all the nuances of how things actually play out within the classrooms, the virtual classroom as well as the in-person classroom. A point that I want to make as we talk about CVL, because certainly it's a, quite frankly, you're probably one of the more popular topics in terms of emails received from the school district. And rightfully so, because one, it's a new model, it's a new experience for us. And for people may say, why can't we do like certain states I've received? Why can't we do like Massachusetts? Why can't we do like Connecticut? The reality of it is we're not Massachusetts, we're not Connecticut. However, we have looked at plans from across the country to, quite frankly, just steal the best of the best and try to use those things to build our model forward, because everyone is trying to build a model. And when you look across the regions, models are going to have differences. The model here at Shen is going to be different from our neighboring school district in many ways. And some of those based upon capacity, not only capacity of students, also based upon capacity, not only capacity of staff, but also based upon the needs of our students. And so we're trying to build a model to take advantage of those two things. And so right now, as of today, actually, we're around 925, roughly 923 students whose parents have opted them out and put them into the CVL schooling environment. And we anticipate that number will be adjusted after after this presentation. So our estimates will be about 10 to 15% will opt into the completely virtual learning. By contrast, that means about 85 to 90% of our students will be in person. So a lot of time is being committed to ensure that the 9,000 roughly students that's going to be in person, that we're capable of providing a solid programming for them, as well as the time such as today's time committed to talk about the things that we have done with CVL to ensure that, again, we're meeting the needs of that 10 to 15% of students who will be learning in that completely virtual learning environment. So those things are important to know because as a school district, we're looking at every child. We're not looking at certain kids versus other kids. We're looking at how do we provide education to every student within our system. And again, just wanted to reiterate this piece before I transition to Dr. Wood, who's our deputy superintendent, is that this is a pandemic era that we're in. And we're trying to provide schooling in this pandemic. And if you watch the news on any given day across the country, different schools are having different experiences opening, and we are planning for the very best experience here at Shen, first starting with the safety aspect of it, and then the quality educational experiences our students will receive. So I trust and hope that our parents will be mindful of that our community is mindful of that, in particular when we start talking about things, asking kids to follow protocols, wearing masks, social distancing, all those things becomes important. It's everyone's responsibility in order for us to be successful in providing education here at Shen. Everyone's responsibility. It starts with all of us, and I really, I'm enthusiastic about the start of school, and depending on everyone who's listening today and whomever you may communicate with, to do their part, particularly the part in terms of preserving safety. So at this point, Dr. Wood will walk through based upon on a lot of questions we've already received. We received, who knows, right now my email box is about 300 emails, and I would guarantee you probably 90% of them are related to reopening type questions that people have. And it's a good thing. People want to know, and we're trying to provide answers. But you have to recognize that there's simply certain answers we won't have until we complete certain stages. And there's certain answers that, quite frankly, with you won't have until we start the process of schools and making the adjustments that we make every year in any given school year. But this particular school year, we're particularly mindful of the added impact of the safety need related to COVID-19. So Dr. Wood, please, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. So as we look at goals for reopening, it was really focused on making sure we're providing quality instruction in the core content areas. We want to make sure we're focusing on building the skills of our students in those core content areas, that connections are being fostered between students and teachers and students with other students, and that students feel comfortable coming back into the school environment. We're also prioritizing the core graduation requirements for our students. So carefully looking at what is it that every student at the high school needs in order to be able to work toward graduation successfully. Also looking to ensure that our Shenendehowa students have Shenendehowa teachers as much as possible, and that is our intent. We are working hard to make that happen. We've had several questions. Will my child, if they're in the completely virtual learning, the CVL, have a Shen teacher? Our goal for that is yes, and we are going to work to make that happen wherever possible. Know that staffing is tight as we move forward, planning for both openings of the reopening and the completely virtual. We've fielded a lot of questions, and so the first several slides that we'll walk through are just general questions that we have been receiving. For grades 1 through 5, we've had a lot of questions about what will it look like? Will it look like it did in March and April and May? And the answer is no. It is going to be more rigorous in that completely virtual learning model, which we refer to as CVL. It will be more rigorous. It will be a longer day. We're looking at approximately an 8:30 start to 1:30, and please know these are approximate times. We have posted a kindergarten sample schedule, a first and second grade sample schedule, and a third through fifth grade sample schedule. They are linked in today's presentation. After this live stream, when we post the video, we're also going to be posting on the reopening page links to these sample schedules so families can go back and take a look. But as you go back and take a look, you will see we have blocked out certain times, ELA, and math. We also have time for recess, breaks for lunch built in there. The times that students are receiving instruction, sometimes it's going to be live instruction from a teacher at that moment. It will be synchronous instruction. Other times it will be asynchronous. It will be pre-recorded lessons that students are being asked to log in and take a look at. At the K3 level, they'll be using the Seesaw platform, and at the 3-5 level, they will be using the Google platform, the Google Classroom platform. So I know I've mentioned here grades 1 through 5. However, kindergarten, that the sample schedule is there, that will be based on a half-day consolidated schedule. So those sample schedules are there. Please note, again, I just want to emphasize they are samples. ELA may not be first thing. If that's what's listed as first, it might be math that comes first. It might be social studies or science that comes first in the day. All right, as we continue on, instruction in the core areas, both, and now we're talking specifically about in-person, and we make this distinction because we've received a lot of questions that say, well, for me to better understand if I'm going to send my child into school, I need to know a little bit more about the in-person model. So instruction in the core areas will be delivered by a group of certified teachers. So at the second grade, where we would have had, say, 4 teachers, now with socially distanced classrooms, we'll have 6 different instructional groups, and those 4 teachers plus a few additional teachers from the school will be providing instruction. Some of the instruction will be live from the teacher standing right in front of them. Others will be accessing videos and with an adult with them in the room. Teachers are going to be asked to build in times for socialization. I'm sure they're already planning to do so, making sure that students are remaining socially distanced with opportunities for recess. Obviously, recess won't look the same as it has, where all students at a grade level will not be out on the playground at the same time. We do know that art, music, and physical education will be limited, in part because of space demands, also because of the day with the focus on the cores. However, we are talking about ways that we can work it in where possible during the in-person, and also we'll talk about that a little bit more for the completely virtual. Well, I just referenced the specials for completely virtual. Those will be provided via video. They'll be uploaded to the Seesaw platform or the Google Classroom platform, so students are able to do those at home. All right, moving on to grade 6. We've had a number of questions about grade 6, the completely virtual model. Again, much like the elementary, it is going to focus on core content areas. It's going to be both synchronous, as in live in-person instruction. Sometimes it will be live instruction and potentially broadcast to students in another room, and sometimes it will be asynchronous, pre-recorded lessons. We will be providing special areas to the extent possible, although we are currently looking at that both in terms of in-person, but even at home, we're looking at posting some of those lessons where students in person are also able to get them. CVL students, there was a question, will CVL students who are entering grade 6 receive a Chromebook like our 6th grade class typically does coming in? And the answer is yes, and they will be receiving not just the Chromebook, but also have access to the G Suite tools in Google Classroom. And our 6th grade teachers are very savvy at using all of those tools, and I think our 6th grade students will find that very useful in terms of their organization. So the grade 6 students who are attending in person, they will rotate classrooms through the day. They will not go through 8 or 9 classrooms in a day or 10. They will go through a few. Probably 4 or so, although we're still working out some of those details. We are trying to make sure that we're limiting the total numbers of groups that they're coming in contact with throughout the day. Teachers also for grade 6 will be asked to build in times for socialization. As I mentioned, we're still working on the details related to special areas. And the question has come up, where will students who are coming back to school for grade 6 have an orientation? And we are indeed scheduling in-person orientation sessions for the beginning of September. More information on that to come will be sent to all families by building principals. Additional questions about the completely virtual learning CVL for grades 7 through 12. CVL students will follow the same daily schedule as in-person students. So if block one starts at, just insert time, 8 a.m., that is the time CVL will start for students at home. They will need to log in real time, just like the students who are attending in school. They will be learning both sometimes live, and sometimes the teachers will say, you're not remoting in live today. This is the work you need to be doing at home. You need to watch this video. Here's the assignment you're to complete, and then you're to upload this to the Google Classroom. So I already noted CVL instruction will begin at the same time as in-school instruction for grades 6 through 12. That's actually for in-school instruction. For CVL, it's actually grades 6 through 12. It will begin at the same time. Already mentioned that we're looking at performing groups and how we can offer them. We do intend to be able to offer music lessons to both in-person and those students who are at home. Not quite sure about performing groups yet for either in-person or those at home. More information to come on that. Here's an example of both. This is basically a block schedule. And this will be the schedule used by CVL and in person. And this is just a student's kind of, I say, hypothetical schedule. So on Monday, you would see that this student would have for block one, English class. Block two would be math. Block three, if they had a study hall. And then block four would be their science class. If the student is in school, they're actually going to those classes. If the student is at home, they're following along and they're completing their English work or logging in live time for English during that block one, block two math. Block three, if they're at home, they're doing what they choose to do during that study hall. There's nothing to report for. And then block four for science. On Tuesday, world language would occur at that block one time. So students who are in school on that day and the students at home would be logging in for world language. Now, teachers will be communicating with students in advance at what point they need to be logging in during that block. But that is time designated for world language. Again, something that we learned from the spring was that we needed a very clear schedule in the event for virtual learning so that we weren't scheduling competing classes at the same time. So right now, performing groups, as I've mentioned, are being examined in person. I know I've heard stories of our music teachers coming in with tape measures, trying to figure out how many students we can fit in some of our largest spaces 12 feet apart. It is definitely a challenge. If anybody can figure out how to do it, our team can figure it out. I do know that they are committed to offering music lessons. The question has come up about lockers. Lockers will not be used, at least initially. Students will be allowed to carry backpacks. In part, lockers won't be used because we're trying to limit the amount of time students are stopping in the hallways and potential traffic tie-ups in the hallways. We will be allowing students to carry backpacks, and just the very nature of having a block schedule, the amount of supplies that they should be carrying each day will just naturally be limited because they're only planning for 3 or 4 classes a day. And if we find that moving into the winter, it's too much for students to be carrying around, particularly at the middle school level, some of them are still, good job moms and dads who are able to get their middle schoolers to wear the heavy coats and boots still. We may be looking and revisiting the lockers as need be. We don't see as much of that at the high school, but we will certainly evaluate that as we move forward. So those were some kind of general information questions that we wanted to make sure we addressed. And so now we have some very specific questions that we have received and wanted to provide some very specific answers to. So one of the questions we've received a number of times is, why are you asking families to commit to CVL already? And trust me, if we could give more time, we really would. In order for us to be ready to open school in 4 weeks, I would not even begin to explain the amount of time that is currently going into building an in-person schedule. It typically takes us about 5 months, maybe a little bit longer, to build our in-person schedule for the coming year. Now we're developing a revised schedule, and it's a 2-tier schedule where we've got some that are coming in person and some that are going to be at home. We also have to start looking at how we're going to be assigning staff for the completely virtual learning sections, particularly at the elementary level, and making sure that we have enough staff to cover the needs of all of our students within our adopted 2020-21 budget. Another question that came in is, if I'm new to the district and I register after August 17th, may I opt into CVL? The answer to that is yes. We won't have that many new entrants after this point in the summer. Why does it seem so hard for you to staff CVL? What are the issues? And that's a good question. I fielded that question many times over the last several weeks. And just to give you a sense of what we're working with, in the early days of the sign up for CVL, say we had 25 first graders sign up for CVL. Some of the indications from emails were like, well, why can't you just take the teacher for those 25 and move them over? The challenge is those 25 first graders typically don't all come from the same school. And so if they were all from one school, or even if we had 18 from one school, not a problem, because we're creating pods of 18 in person. But when they're distributed across all 8 schools, we still have to program for the ones in school, and now we have the additional responsibility to provide staffing for the ones at home, which we are working to do, but we need to have a sufficient number out in order, in the CVL model, in order to have staffing that we can use to teach those students who are at home. We are working very hard on this, but please know staffing is exceptionally tight. And people who end up enrolling later in CVL know it may take us a little while to place your student in the CVL section. So for those of you who are not committing to CVL right now, you do not feel comfortable, your intention is to send your students in person, please know we will be ready for your students. That's what we're planning on. We're planning on the majority of our students being here in person. If you ask later to switch your child into the CVL, please know, particularly at the elementary level, it may take us a little bit to be able to accommodate that request, simply because if those sections are full, we're going to have to do some juggling of staff members, which is a challenge mid-year. We will certainly work to try to address your need, but it may take just a little bit of time. And another question that we've received often is, if we choose CVL, is there a dedicated teacher for the class? And just like I was describing before, the elementary in-person model, just like in-person instruction in the coming year, students will be assigned to groups of teachers who will work together to provide instruction. So what will the CVL class sizes be? In general, we're looking at having CVL class sizes be comparable to what in-person class sizes would have been in a non-COVID class setting. So in a typical school year, we would have 22, 24, 26 in our elementary classes. The reason we're scaling the in-person back to 18 is simply because we need to socially distance our students. The good news is that students in the completely virtual learning environment, learning from home, are already naturally socially distanced, so that is no longer a concern. Another question was, will my child have the same classmates throughout the year? That's our plan. However, if parents, and many of you are well aware that we've given some deadlines, if parents would like to opt their children back into in-person instruction, we've set those deadlines for dates for notification so that we can plan for that. If parents opt their children back in for in-person, then the enrollment of that class will change. If parents opt their children out, then those group structures may change. But our intent is that the children in CVL will have the same classmates where possible. Another question we've received frequently is my child able to participate in accelerated math or Quest? And this was very specific to the elementary level. And the answer is yes. However, it's going to look different. Lessons are going to be provided by video with teacher support. So we will be providing those programs, but even in school, those programs are going to look different as well. So accelerated math and Quest will be provided, but they will look different if you're in school. And yes, they will be available to some extent, kind of matching how they will look in school for those students who are participating in the completely virtual. Another question was, if my child's in completely virtual, can I still participate in PTA and other virtual school activities? And the answer to that is yes. Grades 7 through 12 CVL. Will CVL students learn alongside in-person hybrid students? The answer to that is yes, they will. We have done a lot of thinking about the best way to schedule completely virtual learning students in at the secondary level. Tried to work through creating separate sections for them. There are benefits to both models, but what would have happened is the creation of a number of singletons in the schedule, and it would have made it extremely hard for students learning from home to be able to access the majority of their classes. So as I'd mentioned before, when the in-person class is happening is when CVL students will be participating in that class remotely, sometimes in real time. Sometimes they will just be assigned materials by the teacher to be completing, and the teacher may just have drop-in office hours during that time. There are times where what's happening at home will not be completely the same as what is happening in class. There are some activities that will be completed in class that cannot be replicated at home. So will all courses be offered for CVL? The majority will. Most will be offered. A few that we are looking at right now, one of the ones I thought might not be able to be offered was automotive. However, in talking with the automotive teacher, he thinks he has some suggestions as to workarounds. A few teachers that we've been in touch with that say it is going to be exceptionally challenging and probably not feasible to offer a completely remote instruction. Computer integrated manufacturing, which we refer to as SIM, and digital electronics. The computer integrated manufacturing is an intensely hands-on course where students have to produce a product in person. The digital electronics course relies on very heavy software that does not run on most home computers and does not run on Chromebooks. So if your children were registered for those courses and are signing up for completely virtual learning, please know counselors will be reaching out to discuss other elective offerings. But the vast majority of our secondary courses will be available for grades 7 through 12 in the CVL option. So will my child have the same counselor if they are CVL? The answer is yes. Can we still use school resources if we are in the CVL, like the library? The answer to that is electronic resources that can be accessed, yes. We are still even looking at how we will use any kind of school resources or supplies in person. Where they're available, we will try to do our best, but no, we are already having to work on what the protocols will be if library books are borrowed, how they will return and then be left to sit for a period of time so that they are then okay for another student to borrow maybe a few days or a week or so later. Another question was, can a student in CVL still participate in honor societies? And the answer is that CVL students will be able to participate in all virtual options, and we know that there are a number of both clubs and honor societies that will be able to be available to students in our CVL. All right, so now we're going to shift to questions submitted in the chat, and so we will start reviewing those. Another clarification I do want to make is that when looking at the completely virtual and talking about having those students mirror and stay on the roster of the teachers who are in person, that process helps us ensure that we are not changing a host of schedules for both teachers and students in the coming year.
Good. Sir? Chime in?
Sure. Okay, so one of the questions that we have received is, this is a pandemic complicated, being spread by those without symptoms. Why is CVL not the plan for as many as possible and in class from the exception? Well, the reality is we were asked to plan for an in-person return to school, and we have a number of families in our community who are expecting, obviously as according to our numbers, an in-person return. We did hear the concerns loud and clear from our families and did work over the last few weeks to create the CVL option. We are going to take as many safety precautions as possible for in-person, and more will be shared on that in a coming live stream early next week. So will CVL students now be allowed to participate in high school sports now that the New York State Public High School Association sent out the clarification memo. Does Shen decide, or does New York State Public High School Athletic Association decide?
Actually, that is actually New York State Public High School Athletic Association is regulated by the New York State Education Department, and as well as mandates from the New York State Department of Health. And so as we speak, we're still waiting in terms of even what sports be offered, period. So once that determination is made, the New York State Public High School Association will then make that announcement. And here at Shen, we'll plan accordingly. What can we do safely and effectively?
So another question is, will orchestra be offered virtually as well as world languages? I believe that was already addressed when we said for grades 7 through 12, world languages are only grades 7 through 12, that they will be attached to the in-person. So the answer to world languages is yes. Related to orchestra, we're working on that, and if we can make it happen, I know our teachers are very anxious to have our students have that opportunity. If we can make it happen, we will. How are teachers prepared? What has been their involvement since you need to focus on an actionable plan? What input have you gotten from them to successfully make this opening worthwhile? I can tell you we have had a number of teachers that have consulted with us. We are going to be doing even more of that in the coming weeks. We have had some core planning groups. We do feel like we need to provide additional professional learning for teachers, particularly at the start of the year. This is different, and our teachers are going to get some support on teaching in a block. They are also going to get additional support on teaching in the virtual environment, and even support with students in the class some days, other students in the class other days, and students at home. And so along with this question, I think it's a great time to say we need to be very patient with our teachers as they're learning, show them a tremendous amount of grace. This is an extremely difficult time for teachers teaching during this kind of situation. And we have very capable teachers in Shenendehowa, very hardworking teachers. They will be doing their absolute best during this time. So the next one is, how much will parents have to help, or how much will parents have to help elementary students during CVL? That's a great question. That is really going to depend a lot on your child. I do think the parents of the younger elementary students are going to need to make sure that the device is charged, that they can log in and access the live instruction. However, there's also a thing is offering too much help. We had some stories from the spring of some parents jumping in and offering questions in the CVL. And so our teachers are going to be prepared to provide parents some support that's not appropriate. If you would not be doing it in the typical classroom, we're asking that you not do that in the CVL as well. So we'd like your children to be as independent as possible, recognizing that our youngest students are going to need help getting their Chromebook ready to go. Being online, following the clock schedule, turning in their work, and your child, your child's level of independence. We ask that you help them be as independent as possible, knowing that they still will need parent support. Okay, will a Chromebook be provided for K-5 virtual learning? Much like we did in the fall, if a Chromebook is needed, if a family does not have a resource at home, or trust me, we understand some of you have several resources, but they're in use with mom or dad working from home, you are able to request through your principal access to a Chromebook, and we will do our best to try to supply you with one. Already answered the next question. Sorry, we're just reading through and trying to make sure we're not duplicating what we've already shared. Okay, so another question is, if we choose virtual, so if we choose CVL and then the in-person classes move to virtual, will our kids be reintegrated into their normal classes? At the elementary level, our intention is that they will stay with their separate CVL sections because they will have already built a relationship with those teachers and the students. We will be monitoring that as we move forward. Will middle schoolers have access to world language? Yes, the answer is yes. My daughter switched to online when she starts school, or does she have to wait until the semester is over? So the switch, as noted, anybody who has not registered for CVL as of Monday at 8 a.m., we're going to be planning for in person. Secondary students or parents who decide the children will go to CVL or will request that, we are probably going to be able to accommodate that transition a little more smoothly. Elementary, it's going to take a little bit more time for us to find a section for your child, but we will work on it to the best of our ability. Will there be an expected time commitment, either number of hours or specific time frame for elementary CVL so that we can plan to support? Yes, there will be. Please take a look at those elementary schedules that were posted. In general, we're looking at from 8:30 to 1:30 each day for our elementary students in grades 1 through 5. Some of that time will be live instruction with teachers. Other times the students will be working on their own or viewing videos. Does a parent need to be there with the child throughout that time? You know your child to know if they're able to be independent. Some of the videos, because I think some of the questions are coming from parents who are also working at home. If it's an asynchronous video and the work isn't due until the next day, it would be acceptable that you have your child watch that later when you're able to support your child. So there will be some opportunity for parents to make some decisions about when the child is doing the work. However, the live sessions, we expect the child to be participating in live time. Sorry, scrolling down because we have some duplicate questions here. All right, so if school goes online again in the middle of the fall, so if we, for any reason, are told we need to shut down school, will courses that were taught in person also be available online? And the intention that particularly grades 7 through 12, we will be able to switch into the virtual environment following the same in-person schedule as if students were here and doing that virtually. So yes, students would stay enrolled in their same courses. Another question is, are CVL teachers aides or are they typical grade level teachers? We are going to have certified teachers teaching students in both the in-person and the CVL. We, in the in-person, use aides to help support and supervise students, and we may be doing that as well in the CVL, but the direct instruction will be coming from certified teachers. Will new students have an orientation? Yes, that is the intention, and building principals will be communicating that. A question about critical inquiry, which is a grade 6 enriched reading course. Will it be offered? We are currently working on that. We are looking at what the options are for critical inquiry. We would like to think that students will have access to enriched reading curriculum. And the grades, if the other questions are about middle school honors classes for grades 7 through 12, those will be running as scheduled. This seems like a question from a student. Will not going to high school art and PE affect my GPA? Yes. If you're enrolled in art, then yes, you will be expected to complete the work associated with art, and that will impact your average. Physical education is a required course for graduation, and yes, students will need to complete their physical education to work toward graduation. Will students in CVL be assigned a class? And if so, will we have to access a class list so we can reach out to other students to collaborate remotely? Teachers will handle some of that as they work through having students in Google Classroom. So yes, in remote, there will be opportunities for you to engage with other students, and through Gmail in our internal system. Another question is, are you going to mail us textbooks? Interestingly, we as a school system don't have nearly as many textbooks as most school systems don't, as we did say 20 years ago. Where textbooks are going to be used, we will make sure there's either an electronic version access, and that's more at the secondary level. I think the question in some cases is specific to elementary Go Math. If your child would have been an in-person student and would have had access to a Go Math workbook, we will supply those Go Math workbooks to students. We will arrange some sort of pickup from the home school at some point in mid-September. A question about my child is enrolled in AP classes, and if we decide to do the virtual only, how do we know that AP classes will be available to her? I believe I answered that by saying the classes that students have signed up for is what they will get in the CVL, with the exception of classes that we believe cannot be taught 100% virtual. And the two classes that we know right now are going to be problematic are the computer and integrated manufacturing, and the second one was like digital electronics, I think. Those two are very challenging to do from home, but the rest, including AP and honors courses, will be able to be offered for grades 7 through 12 in the completely virtual. So there's a question about students who are looking at reintegrating into the building in January. So in other words, if they're home for the first semester at the secondary level and are coming back in January, how will they be reintegrated? We will be having those conversations this fall. We will be having to look at what the social distancing requirements are as of January, and at this point, August to January is quite a ways away. Our intention will be to allow them to enroll back, to return to school and access the same courses. We will definitely be working toward that, but we would have more information about that come late fall.
Didn't the College Board come out with something about APs?
Yeah, Dr. Robinson's reminding me, the College Board, it's the company that sponsors and creates those advanced placement courses, is working with school districts across the nation to share videos for each AP course. And so I think we anticipate our teachers having access to some high quality instructional videos, which will also be useful to the students learning AP who are part of the completely virtual learning school. Dr. Robinson, as you scroll down, if you see any others. Another question about how much time each day for CVL at the elementary level. Please take a look at the sample schedules that have been posted on the district's reopening page. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see some sample schedules, and I emphasize they are sample. Double underline the word draft on them. ELA may not be the first thing offered in the morning. It may not follow that exact schedule, but you get a sense of what the expectation will be.
At the elementary level, most of the time will be synchronous, correct?
We believe it will be.
Most of the day for a student.
That, yes, a good portion of the time will be synchronous, yes. Another question about opting out of transportation. If you opt out of transportation, will it be for the whole year? What if things change later in the year? We understand our transportation department would need ample time to build a student back into a run. So it is certainly our preference, if you opt your child out, that your intention is that you're trying to bring your child to and from school each end of the day, whatever you communicate with the transportation department, for the full year. If you have an emergency, one of you has to go back to work in person, it doesn't, where there's a qualifying event, we will really look to take a case-by-case basis for that. We also encourage families who are comfortable carpooling. We know we've heard some stories of families working together who live, are neighbors or extended family members working to drive in together on the days that there'll be in-person schooling.
Can you look at K1? Kristen's question.
Does my son does a full year of CVLK and returns to normal in 21-22? Would he be able to repeat kindergarten in person if we feel like he didn't get enough from CVL? So the question is, if my child does CVL kindergarten, could he repeat kindergarten if we as parents didn't feel he got enough? We would really have to review that. The teacher would be monitoring your child's progress throughout the year and would have a good sense of your child's ability to progress onto first grade. Retention is very uncommon at the elementary level. If only retention research showed that that was a successful option, we would probably consider it more often, but most often students do best, and I know sometimes it sounds counterintuitive, by moving on to the next grade level and then having some remediation provided to them, and very often students catch up and do just fine as they progress through their journey of schooling.
Two logistical questions, Elizabeth. One was about if I submitted the online form, is that sufficient? At this point, yes. If you did, we have the information we need. And another logistical question that was asked about academic calendar being adjusted. At this point, we're waiting to hear from the State Education Department related to the 180-day requirements, and that will impact our calendar. So hopefully we thought it was going to be this week. So hopefully in the coming week we'll have that stipulation from the state, and we'll modify the calendar accordingly. So that's to come. CVL and homeschool.
I'm not sure which one you're on.
Rebecca.
There are a few. Sorry.
CVL students going to be included with their homeschool.
Our CVL students going to be included in their homeschool at the elementary level. We're looking at having entire kindergarten sections of CVL that would be kindergarten students who have opted into CVL from across the district. Same at first grade, same at second grade, so they would have their own cohort of students. We've thought long and hard about it, and we're still working through the logistics related to it, but to know as a kindergarten teacher that I am working and just focused on the students on the screen as opposed to the students who are in the classroom and on the screen. We believe that is, if we're able to schedule it that way, which we're really hoping, a better experience both for the CVL students at home and for those who are in person, and the teacher's ability to feel like he or she is having a positive impact on the learning.
The date of the trimesters.
We posted those dates. Okay. The question was, what are the dates to opt back in? And those dates were posted in the original CVL document. So parents are aware of what date they need to notify the school district by in order to opt back in. And we'll send something out as the dates get closer so parents know the way to opt their child back in.
Access to email. See, students will still have the same email access.
Yes, we're talking about... Yeah, we have email access for students in grades 6 through 12. At the elementary level, we've implemented the Seesaw platform, which makes student and teacher communication more easily done.
Speech therapy, special ed services.
So special education services are going to be carefully evaluated for all students in the CVL program. Where adjustments need to be made in the delivery of service, somebody will be reaching out to families to have that conversation. Speech services, the intention is that they'll be able to be delivered virtually.
Shutting down a building for COVID. The question about how many COVID cases are acceptable. That's not a question to be answered. None is acceptable. To correct frank with you. The contact tracing process is coordinated with the Saratoga County Health Department, And once we have even an indication of a potential case, we engage that process, and that determination we made based upon situation. If we are able to identify the potential impacted parties, we could then engage in contact tracing and try to isolate as much as we possibly can. So everything, that's a very situational case, and one that, quite frankly, we know we don't want to, but the likelihood that we may have to deal with the case, and we have a process, again, coordinated with the Saratoga County Health Department, our school physician, as well as our school nurses. All our nurses have gone through the Johns Hopkins training for contact tracing, so well versed in the process and what we need to do very quickly to contain any potential situation.
Sorry, just scrolling through questions, trying to find ones that we have not addressed. One question comes up is about how about socialization for CVL students? We have had conversations about that, and if you notice, you look at those sample schedules, there's opportunity for morning meeting. There's just some kind of community building opportunities at the beginning and at the end of the day, and certainly where teachers feel it's relevant or a good time to do so during the day, that would be welcome as well. But there will be an opportunity to, and an expectation to build a sense of community within those CVL classrooms.
Access to technology is a question that came up several times. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, we have till grade 4 or 5.
Yeah, 6 through 12 currently have devices. Some students borrowed devices in the spring in K through 5. Students that need them will put in a request through the principal.
Okay, so just to clarify the process, I was talking to a technology person who's actually in the room. We have different people here to make sure that we can address certain questions if we don't have an answer. And we have been one-to-one for grade 6 through 12, so those students have. We also loaned out, I think, approximately 600 devices during the recent close down. And if we have a family with a need, there's a process that person needs to contact the respective building principal and go through the process of requesting a device, because we need to make sure that, one, we are tracking where devices are going, and two, have some sense of how many devices we may need or not need. So I would encourage whomever think they need a device to contact the respective building principal.
Question is, how would a student attending BOCES be able to get the schedule accomplished if they're at BOCES during the first 2 blocks of the day? We just build the student's schedule around the BOCES schedule, just like we need to build a student's schedule around a 9-period day. So it would just be that the student, when the student is with us, they take the blocks that are remaining on the other half of the day when they're with us. Another question was, what technology will CVL students in K-5 need? Will iPads be sufficient? For most students, a Chromebook works well. iPads do work. You as a parent, I would encourage you to try out the iPad, particularly for the younger student or early on. And if that isn't working for you, you can reach out. But for many, the iPad will work well, and in some cases, for our youngest learners, is a good solution for the touch and the accessibility of creating work and viewing the videos and interacting with the rest of the class. Another question is, what % of teachers are coming back to school? The vast, vast majority, and we look forward to welcoming our teachers back. Somebody is saying, my kids are anxious to go back. If they are too stressed to learn in person, can they switch? Well, there will be a process to enroll in CVL. As noted, it may take a while to get your child back. We do hope that you're having some conversations at home about what school will look like. Our administrators will be reaching out to the students returning to give them assurance. They are going to see their administrators walking around with their mask on, creating some instructional videos to welcome them back, and also an orientation period. I do think when our students get back into the setting, they're going to realize, like, as much as some things are different, there are a lot of great things that remain the same, such as my ability to see my teacher and hear and learn from my teacher in person. So I think as much pre-setting as we can do, and we've talked about just making sure that when we're going into, that it's not forbidden that our children go into sports with us at this point. If they're coming back to school, it's going to be important that they go out into the community with us now and learn to wear a mask and work on the hand washing. I know we're spending time on that in our household, and I continue to remind everybody who enters in the house, like, have you washed your hands? Didn't sound like long enough. Have you washed your hands thoroughly? Just right down to learning how to have and be responsible for our own hygiene will be important. So parents, the more you can work on that with your children, we really appreciate it for your child's health and for the health of others.
Can you reiterate sixth grade? Because there's couple questions about how sixth grade is structured again.
Yeah, so we're currently working on the structure for sixth grade. There are likely to be teams of teachers for students. The students will be likely rotating through a few different classrooms. More information about sixth grade will be coming, but we are definitely, much like the elementary schools, focusing on core instruction. Additional, like, unified arts will be offered where available. But we're really trying to make sure that the students have access in these socially distanced classrooms. And it's definitely complicated by having our sixth graders back every day. That is why we can't offer quite the same for sixth grade as grades 7 through 12, where we have about 50% coming into the school each day. And so we're really looking carefully at sixth grade, following more of an elementary model, where we're looking at providing instruction in the core areas as the primary area of focus for the return.
And similarly, 7-12, CVL will follow this similar on-off, 2 days on-off as their in-person colleague.
Yes, good point. Right. And that's a great clarification. Yes, if you're a CVL, you would try to log in to the in-person. That's right. The 2 day, the group that you're with, and then you would be doing the at-home work the other time. But it's important to note that there may be times, like, say, a math teacher says, I'm going to live stream my lesson every day. So there isn't going to be like this is what you do when you're with me, and then you do something independently when you're at home. Every day, I'm teaching new math content, and whether you're in school with me or you're at home, you are logging in at this time and you are following along as I am providing new instruction. Then there will be an opportunity for students to practice what they've learned and have access to the teacher through Google Meet if they're at home, or in person, the teacher working with the teacher directly.
Support for families if a child is struggling to log on at home. What support does a family have? How can we support?
Yeah, good question. If you're struggling to log on at home, first point of contact will be the teacher, but recognizing the teacher has a responsibility to teach the other students who have logged in. We're looking at having some key point people if you're struggling with technology at home, and more information will be communicated. The challenge, particularly if you're working on non-Chromebooks, is sometimes the interface looks different, and we just have to give you some suggestions about how to access. Although we do believe we are streamlining more certainly than what families' experiences were in March, April, May, and June, simply by having a common platform for kindergarten through third grade. That should be the landing page where all of your assignments or all materials are posted for our elementary students, which should really help with the tech questions that came up in the spring.
I think just want to reiterate the potential use of regional resources for some courses.
Yes, we are looking at if we get to a place and we don't have staffing, like I said at the beginning, we are looking to make sure our Shenendehowa teachers are our first option for providing instruction to our students. If there is a course that we are unable to offer, or we're unable to switch certain students as quickly to CVL as they may have liked, there are going to be some regional resources that many local districts are participating in through Capital Region BOCES. They will be certified teachers. In some cases, we probably would have loved to have had the opportunity to hire some of those teachers. We will make sure it is a quality experience, but there may be some. I believe it will, at this point, we believe it will be very limited. The majority of our students will have Shenendehowa teachers, but where we're unable to fill something, there's the opportunity to look at other resources.
And can you, came up several times, reiterate that IEPs will be adhered to
Yes.
as much as possible, and
Absolutely.
CSE will engage if we need to make modifications?
Yes, to Dr. Robinson's point, we will be following students' IEPs. In a few cases, they will be amended. If they were written as a co-taught, it may be shifted to a resource support simply because the student wouldn't be in a large classroom setting in person. But those decisions certainly won't come from me today. That will come through the CSE or amendments to the IEP. Our academic administrators for special education are monitoring our students who are signing up for the completely virtual learning option, and we'll be checking in with families as our school psychologists in terms of providing supports.
A safety one came up. Apparently, someone was told that teachers will be left up to teachers for safety measures within the classroom, as always the case. Teachers, classroom management is a major role for teachers, but safety is everyone's responsibility, and that's the reason why we'll be providing video, different information leading up to the start of school, so students understand and know what the new environment is going to be like. So it's not necessarily up to any one individual. Quite frankly, it's going to be up to everyone to ensure the safety of each other.
So there is a question: why are we presenting instruction by a group of teachers in person when each teacher has their own each class has their own well-qualified teacher standing right in the room? I think that's a misconception and perhaps a poor word choice on my part. It will be a group of teachers responsible for providing instruction across multiple areas, and they will work on some sort of rotation. So one cluster of students may have, socially distanced group of students may have their English instruction from a certain teacher at a certain time, and that teacher may move to the next group of 18 to also provide English instruction, or that teacher may live stream. We certainly won't have 3 teachers standing in one room while 2 are watching. That would not be a great use of their time, nor great learning for the students in the other rooms. I did receive a correction from Michelle Mylod, Director of Special Education, who is correcting my wording when I say amending IEP. She says we are not amending IEP, so I have asked her what the correct wording is. I do know that we will be taking a look at IEPs in terms of how we're going to be offering the program delivery. I'm sure she'll be responding shortly, and I will share that out with you.
Just a safety question came up about classrooms, bathrooms. The custodial, they'll be, right now, I would say our buildings are cleaner than most places and will continue to be so. So frequent cleaning is a part of the safety policy, and having available sanitizers and things within classroom spaces available, having spaces, frequently touched spaces wiped down during transition periods is something we're working on now. Having more staff, second shift staff working on first shift, those type things to enhance our capacity is something that we're in the process of planning for now, because safety is a priority, period.
So another question is, will kindergarten have live teachers, or are they pre-recorded lessons? There will be teachers, kindergarten specific teachers, they will have live interaction. I think a better approach for the question specific to students with IEPs, going to have our Director of Special Education and the academic administrators reach out to families of students who have IEPs who are enrolling in the completely virtual learning and provide specific information, because I want to make sure that the information that you're getting is entirely accurate.
Question about transitions, both at elementary level and the secondary level. You want to speak how we're trying to minimize transitions?
Yes, we are definitely looking to minimize transitions at the elementary level. More often than not, and you've heard me say this, the teachers will rotate at the elementary level. We will be having some movement in the hallway, but we're going to be very careful. We're going to be looking at one-way directions in the hallway, also having some times that are specific for certain classes to be moving in the hallway, but certainly we wouldn't want to have all the students in the hallway at the same time. And that even like to the point about like a staggered recess. It's not that students won't have recess, they just won't necessarily have recess right before or right after lunch. Recess may be at 10 a.m., a time where the fields are relatively open and the hallways are open, and the teachers will know and build into their schedule, all right, boys and girls, students, this is an opportunity for us to go outside now. And so we will be making sure students get up and out of the classroom and are able to move and run around outside like we want our children able to do.
Just can you again reiterate that if a situation occurs and a student who's in CVL, or sorry, a student who's in person, need to transition to CVL, that yes, we certainly look to accommodate, but it could take some transitional time. Can you just reiterate that point?
Yes, at the 7-12 level, even grades 6 through 12, we will probably be able to make that accommodation relatively quickly. For a student moving from in-person to CVL, it shouldn't take long. At the elementary, it may take a little bit longer. Say your child, for reasons of coming into contact with somebody else in your family, needs to be quarantined based on something that happened over the weekend. Your child will be able to shift into that CVL model and kind of keep up with the instruction that way. I did not, when Dr. Robinson asked, I did not address the question about movement in the high school hallways. We are working on having directions put on the floor of the hallways so that students are moving in one-way traffic patterns where possible. It's not possible in every hallway, but in many. And looking to make sure that we are staggering release times, which is one of the reasons that the block schedule is favorable in a socially distanced and looking at the health guidelines associated with the pandemic. We're looking at having increased passing times, which cuts into each academic period. And so not only will they be transitioning fewer times throughout the day, they're going to have longer periods of time to do that. So certain classrooms can be released earlier than others and trying to limit flow through the hallway. And I have heard back from Mrs. Mylod, Director of Special Education, saying that she will be creating a question and answer document specific for families who are opting their children into the completely virtual learning about how services will be delivered. So thank you, Mrs. Mylod. And she is saying that it will be provided in an equitable manner in the CVL.
Questions about privacy and online courses. Ed Law 2D. Want to just talk briefly about that?
Sure. So there is a comprehensive law that has been passed, and the deadline is looming for full implementation. It talks about making sure that we are very careful about student data privacy. We've been working hard in Shenendehowa to make sure that we are only working with vendors such as some of you may have heard of eDoctrina is one of the companies that we work with, to make sure that their data privacy policies adhere to this very strict data privacy law. We do want to make sure that our student data privacy is held very carefully and make sure that nothing is floating out there. We are carefully reviewing the software used. I mean, it's one thing if teachers want to use something and go in with their own credentials to access quality lesson plans. It's another thing if we're having students go into certain websites. Those websites that we have students going in and using their individual credentials for, we're reviewing very carefully. And so the resources that we're purchasing through Shenendehowa and are adopted, we are vetting thoroughly to make sure we are keeping student data safe.
Orientation videos were also for CVL students to help transition to platforms.
Yes, some of this is going to develop kind of in time once we have teachers associated with some of the courses or the CVL sections, and have the opportunity. It's one of those first things first. We really need to make sure our teachers are familiar with the platforms that they're going to be using and are prepared to teach, and then we will be working to make sure that when the opening of school happens, that our students are able to access these platforms, know how to log in. Certainly, much like we show a lot of flexibility and support for sixth graders learning to use lockers in a typical September, students learning to use platforms through the CVL, we will be providing ample support to make sure that they can be successful. We understand we don't all get it on the first try.
just the online Quest program, can you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yes. So we're looking at having the teacher develop enrichment opportunities for students that they would be able to go in and complete it. There's a potential it could be during the school day, but because the school day may be somewhat adjusted, it might be where they access it at home. We are still working through that. What we know we won't be doing, particularly for the in-person, is having students shifting schools. So our previous model was that students would board a bus and go to, it's been Tasago the last few years, and it might be that Carrigan and Shattuckon Quest students were both together at Tasago. We know with the safety guidelines now that we're not going to be kind of commingling students like that. We're having students from other schools entering other schools. So that model falls by the wayside and is unable to be delivered in that way in person. So what we're going to be providing for our in-person Quest students will be the same opportunity we'll be providing for our students who are at home in our CVL program. And we anticipate it will be some sort of online experience, maybe some virtual check-ins. I know the academic or the administrator who's responsible for the program is reaching out to the teacher of the program, possibly today, and having some brainstorming discussions about how to do that. We do intend to offer some version of the program. We just need to do some creative brainstorming about how that will work best for our Quest students, but we do intend to offer something.
The transportation opt-out is a part of the same form as the CVL opt-in?
No, there are two separate
but it was
forms.
out of the same email.
Yes.
So we should look to extend the transportation until Monday morning as well,
Well,
since those things coincide with each other somewhat.
We certainly can. The CVL students, the ones who opt out of in-person instruction, they don't have to opt out of transportation because we already know they're not coming.
Yeah, but I
into
think
school.
since people are looking at the same forms,
Okay.
you're just
So some saying, that's right, I am going to send my child in person. I've decided I'm going to send my child in person, but I'm going to opt them out of transportation. Yes, that's fine. Good point. The question keeps coming up, will CVL teachers be Shen teachers? That is our goal, is to have our Shenendehowa teachers teaching CVL wherever possible. We're very confident that will happen grades 6 through 12. We are almost very, very confident we're going to work as much as we can K-5 to have that happen. We think we can make it happen based on numbers we were running last night, but that's why it's so important that we have finalized CVL numbers by Monday morning so that we can really start looking at who are we planning for in person, who are we planning for at home, and figuring out our balancing of classes so that we can use our Shenendehowa teachers to serve our students. And I know that that's what our teachers are hoping for as well. They want to make sure that they're the ones teaching our Shenendehowa students.
And once teachers are assigned to CVL, teachers will be oriented with their students as they typically would.
Yes. There will be a notification to CVL families about who the teacher is that they are going to be assigned to, and then the teacher will be reaching out in terms of how to get in touch with and start setting up the schedule moving forward. Yes, there will be some sort of orientation time, and I have to believe teachers will be very anxious to meet their students, whether they're in person or part of the CVL program.
And science labs.
Science labs. Anything with supplies is tricky in person and at home. We anticipate, and there has been flexibility given by the state of New York, that some labs that would have otherwise been hands-on for students in person, even for in person, will be the teacher doing some sort of demonstration. Thankfully, there are some really quality programs out there where students can see through 3D models outcomes of science experiments, and some of those videos will be able to be posted for students. So whether you're in person, if you're using materials, we're going to have to be very careful to have all of those sanitized in between. But in some cases, even in person, we won't be doing the experiments the way we were previously would have, we will be using replacement videos. And so those replacement videos would be what is used at home for the CVL students. So I think we have time for just a few more.
Just a question. For middle school, what's the typical time frame? 9:30 to 3, correct? Since middle school, for the time for student, typical similar time frame for middle school students.
Yes, typical time frame as for what the students will be in school. Yes. And I do see one comment saying he's very disappointed that computer integrated manufacturing is likely to not be available. Kids get college credit, so kids will be hurt. If they are not seniors, we hope to be able to schedule them in computer integrated manufacturing in a future year. Trust me, if you talk to any of these teachers, they would much prefer to be able to offer every single course. These are long thought out decisions. I've actually been so incredibly impressed with the flexibility our teachers are showing in terms of, oh, well, yes, normally we would do this in person, but now we're going to do it like this for the students at home. We still want them to enroll in the course. It's been great. And for anybody to say that we can't provide it, A, there are very few courses, and B, know that they have tried and thought about it from every angle, and legitimately do not know how students will be able to do it. If there's a change, if somebody thinks through something, we'll certainly let you know. It's not our intention to withhold courses where possible at all.
And two questions, separate questions, but somewhat related. Will the FAQ document be updated? Yes, we will. And the FAQ document is also translatable to different languages on the website right now. So while this video is not only in English, the FAQ document, which a lot of these questions that we've been addressing will be added to, is translatable.
Another question was, are student support counselors available to students in CVL? And the answer is yes. Our counseling services, our student support counselors will be available to the students in the completely virtual learning environment. So Dr. Robinson, as we look to wrap up, do we want to shift to sharing the upcoming sessions?
Yes, as I pointed out in the beginning, we have several additional sessions. On the 17th, we'll be talking about safety and PPE and a lot of the things that we discussed here. And again, a lot of the information is already right now in our plan, and we'll be reviewing some of that same information as well. We'll be talking about operation and food services. Food services, we may go into a little bit of how looking at prepackaged meals is for the most part trying to minimize large crowds in the cafeteria doing social distancing. So it's a combination of in-class and some large spaces for food services. Same thing with transportation, again, trying to adhere to social distancing. Students will have to wear a mask on buses, period. And when we have those exceptional cases because of medical issues or otherwise where a student cannot, we'll make those accommodations accordingly. And then on the 19th, we'll have some of the same questions about the time frame for instruction, some more logistics such as when will certain information start coming out to teachers to parents for schedules and things of that nature. We hope by the 19th we'll have more of those timelines available and ready to share. That's the goal right now. But we recognize that this is an ongoing process for us as we move forward, and we really appreciate, I'm just looking again, the questions, a lot of questions were very similar, and we hope that this was beneficial. And we will look to update the FAQ document and have an updated version available to folks. Again, the deadline for transportation will extend to Monday morning as well to be similar to the deadline for the CVL. And right now, we are about 925 individuals who opted into the CVL, and we'll see how those numbers shift by Monday because we have to start making those very concrete plans in order to start doing things such as distribution of books, distribution of Chromebooks, and staffing assignments, all those things that we need to really work through those details for the coming week. Related to this, right now, barring a change from the state in terms of not allowing us to do this to some degree, I wouldn't say allow is probably a misnomer, but we're looking to actually using the first 4 days of what we would call the start of school, the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, as days to do professional development, some student orientation. For example, sixth grade orientation has traditionally been a very big one, but now we have to spread it out instead of having every kid come at the same time, for example. And then having students actually start in school on the 14th. So tentatively, that's where we are right now. I say tentatively, people can start to plan around it. However, if something changes or something needs to change, we have to make those adjustments. But that's the plan that we're putting in place because we want to make sure that we are prepared for the smoothest possible start of school. And so we want to make sure we maximize time. We want to make sure that we engage staff in training. We want to make sure we have the necessary videos to help parents, help the students transition at home. We want to make sure that everything from the CVL platforms are ready and people are ready when on the 14th of September is the ideal. And related to that, the school calendar, we'll be making those adjustments once we hear from the state in terms of potential waivers of the 180-day requirement. So a lot of information is out there. I ask people to please read information and recognize that you have many questions and we try to provide answers. A lot of people have very specific questions that can only be answered once we get into the sequence of school itself. Building principals and building administrators, they'll start soon sending out information to families as in the same way they have done in the past. Teachers, once we get that organized, will also start communicating with students as we have done in the past. So in the coming weeks, more information will come. I think that the issue is that right now it feels awkward because we find ourselves in the middle of August and still in very much a planning phase. And that's the reality of the pandemic situation that we're in. And it's no different than any other school district across the country for that matter in terms of what we're trying to deal with. And I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the patience. And we're all simply trying to do our very best job. So thank you very much for joining us on this live stream. We truly hope that it was beneficial. And for those of you who still think that you cannot make a decision, I would simply say, you know what, think about the safety of your child. If the safety of your child is your concern, make your decision based upon that factor. Because at the end of the day, we're all parents and we're trying to make the very best decision for our students. So thank you very much.